Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the latest operations from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter for Spaceflight Now. So good to have you with us. We are currently, we believe, just under 29 minutes away from SpaceX's second attempt to static fire the Falcon 9 rocket that you see there on your screen sitting at Launch Complex 39A. Starting to see some indications that SpaceX is fueling the rocket, which is why we're now joining you with coverage of this important static fire test. It's a precursor to the launch of the Crew 11 mission, which is currently set for Thursday, July 31st at 12:09 p.m. Eastern, 16:09 UTC for those around the world. Right now, SpaceX counting down towards a 12:30 static fire test, 16:30 UTC, where it will briefly ignite the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. And that'll give NASA and SpaceX the data it needs to review and confirm that they are good to proceed towards a launch later this week. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, is running the technical operations of the broadcast today. Our Adam Bernstein has been out and about making sure our cameras are ready and waiting to shoot what will hopefully be a static fire today. If you're not following the photography team of ours, you should follow them on their handles at X. You can find Adam at ABurnNYC. Michael Kane is at MD Kane Jr. John is at John Pisani Photo. And be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. We are also on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook. We'll say it at the top and we'll repeat it till the cows come home. This is a static fire test, not a launch. So if all goes well, we'll see just a brief ignition of those Merlin vacuum engines, but the hold down clamps will remain perfectly fixed where they are, not allowing the Falcon 9 rocket to move in the course of this test. For those of you who were with us yesterday, you'll know this is SpaceX's second attempt at conducting this static fire operation. Following the conclusion of yesterday's test, which resulted in a scrub, not a static fire, NASA and SpaceX put out the same statement on their various social media pages to say that the test auto-aborted at the T-57 second mark, quote, due to an error with the transporter erector's cradle arm position indication. The arm functioned correctly, and teams are reviewing data. That data having been reviewed puts SpaceX in the position to try once again for the static fire of its Falcon 9 rocket. As we're getting things going on this live test coverage, I want to thank the little more than 700 of you who are with us live at this point in the countdown. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream to allow some more folks to find their way into this live static fire test coverage. I also want to thank moderator Rick Donner in the live chat for helping us out today. And if you see any of the other mods cruise on in, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. You can help make Rick's job that much easier just by following the rules of the chat. We ask that you converse in English so that Rick and any other mods that appear today can respond as appropriate. That you not type in all caps. Also refrain from delving into overt politics and religion. And most importantly, that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated. Also, channel member Cumulus Granatus is in the chat to help answer folks' questions as we roll on through the countdown as well. Speaking of channel members, want to thank our channel member community for making these streams possible. So thanks to folks like The Rocket Girl, Butterfly, Sulfur for Lunch, John Corey. I know it's sort of an odd hour, so appreciate all the members who are able to be here today. Kenneth Urbanek also joining us this afternoon. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in the Cape in 4K. Last little bit of housekeeping. If you have a comment or question about this test or other goings on in the realm of space and spaceflight, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. Not only will it be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll also be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. As we continue to progress through the countdown, just under 23 minutes to go, let's go ahead and take a beat to talk about the countdown milestones that we've already passed through and what is still ahead. SpaceX aiming to have a good static fire test when all is said and done. Of course, the big first visual indication that we got that SpaceX was proceeding into this test campaign. Well, we saw some venting earlier on in the day, but then with the crew access arm retracted, that meant we were really in the flow of things by all accounts. The Dragon's launch escape system was armed at T-minus 39 minutes. At T-minus 35 minutes was when SpaceX started to load RP-1, which is a rocket-grade kerosene on board the Falcon's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen began flowing on board the rocket's first stage. Coming up at T-minus 16 minutes is when second stage LOX load will begin. Before we get that far, though, SpaceX will condition the feed lines there at the pad. That starts at T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds. We'll see the visual manifestation of this process at about T-minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds. That's the so-called big vent from the Strongback. That venting will last 4 minutes in duration, ending at T-minus 16:30, setting up second stage LOX load to begin 30 seconds after that. T-minus 7 minutes is when the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway. SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the Strongback retract before the Dragon transitions to internal power. We're coming up on the start of the big vent, so I'll go ahead and bring the rocket full screen and just verbalize the remaining items in the count. As you see, the big vent is now underway. T-minus 3 minutes is when the first stage LOX tank should be full. 2 minutes out, rocket's second stage LOX tank tops off, meaning the vehicle is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. The SpaceX launch director will give their go-ahead for ignition at T-minus 45 seconds. The actual engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds. And if all goes well this go-around at T0, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 16:30 UTC, we'll see a roughly 10-second or less ignition of those Merlin engines at the base, the Falcon booster. Time now, T minus 17 minutes, 12 seconds and counting. Again, you're watching live coverage of this static fire test operation as SpaceX is in the process of preparing for the launch of 3 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut up to the International Space Station as soon as Thursday, July 31st. Just under 17 minutes to go. We've got about 15 seconds left on this vent. And then SpaceX will turn to the start of liquid oxygen loading on the rocket's second stage. There you see the vent has wrapped up. Second stage lock load about to begin at T-minus 16 minutes. The crew are back in their quarantine position, having completed a dry dress rehearsal yesterday. Let's take a brief look back at the milestones that have happened since the overnight hours from Saturday into Sunday, following, of course, the crew's arrival here in Florida on Saturday afternoon. You're taking a look at some video provided by SpaceX of the rollout of their Falcon 9 rocket from the hangar at Launch Complex 39A, arriving there at the pad where you see it standing in its vertical launch position right now in the live box on the right-hand side of your screen. The rocket was raised into the launch position on Sunday morning at just a little before 10 a.m. And then the crew access arm was brought out to meet the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft at the top of the rocket. Then just yesterday, the 4 crew members, you see Zena Cardman on the left, Mike Fincke on the right, 2 NASA astronauts, Kimiya Yui on the left here, Oleg Platonov on the right, 2 mission specialists, and there's your Crew 11 team inside Dragon Endeavour in the midst of that dry dress rehearsal. It's a process of going through all the launch day activities for the crew and for the launch team in order to make sure that everyone knows what to expect and that they're familiarized with the procedures, with the rocket actually at the pad, and with the crew in loop. Here's a look back on the other side of the dry dress rehearsal from inside the Hangar X facility. Of course, we've got NASA teams embedded with SpaceX to monitor the dry dress rehearsal, make sure that everything was running smoothly and that, again, everyone knows their roles and the timing of this well choreographed movements. That screen in the upper right-hand corner of the big box there, that's a look inside the white room with the closeout crew from SpaceX, nicknamed the Ninjas, given their all-black garb there, covering their heads and most of their face, assisting the crew in getting inside the capsule, and then, of course, also being responsible for a good closure of the side hatch and making sure that they've got a completely unobstructed seal. You can also see the NASA meatball logo just above the head of one of the crew members. It's tradition for those who are launching off of pad 39A to sign their name around the NASA meatball logo for those that are embarking on a long duration crew flight. astronauts who are flying as either part of a free flyer mission or a private astronaut mission to the International Space Station, as we just saw with the AX4 team. They sign around the SpaceX logo, which is just out of frame in this shot. Given the position of that one astronaut at least, or one crew member, looks like they will have gotten the signature part of this tradition done and dusted during the dry dress rehearsal, or perhaps they're just simulating that. I suppose we'll have to wait and see when we get to launch day itself, when they show the shot of the white room, and if the crew takes the time to pause and sign their name, or if they just go ahead and proceed towards getting inside their Dragon spacecraft. Speaking of that Dragon spacecraft, this is Crew Dragon Endeavour, which will be making its sixth trip to the ISS. This is the first Dragon that is going to be making a sixth flight in the SpaceX fleet. Both SpaceX and NASA want to certify Dragon for up to 15 flights at minimum. During pre-launch briefings, NASA and SpaceX officials noted that there are various components of the Dragon vehicle that have been qualified for up to 15 flights, but that's not the whole vehicle, so there's still work to be done to make sure that they can get out to that point. And this mission is an important step in that, pardon the pun, endeavor. Taking a look at the live chat here with just about 10.5 minutes on the clock. I want to thank the little more than 1,000 of you who are watching along with us live at this point in our countdown. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream. Also, be sure to subscribe to Spaceflight now if you haven't already, and ring that bell. Make sure you've got notifications turned on, and that way you won't be left in the lurch when we do start these live either test or launch broadcasts, as well as when we post new videos on the channel. For those wanting your fix of an actual launch, we do have another flight of a Falcon 9 rocket coming up tonight. Currently targeting a teaser liftoff from Space Launch Complex 40 at 11:37 p.m. Eastern, 03:37 UTC. That is the Starlink 10-29 mission. Tonight's Starlink mission will see the launch of 28 Starlink V2 mini satellites, adding to the more than 8,000 that are currently in low Earth orbit. Falcon booster flying that mission 1069 with the tail number will be flying for a 26th time. The booster that is going to be launching Crew 11 is nowhere near that old. This will be its third flight to space and back. When it launches, the booster will target a landing back at LZ-1 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, landing zone 1. If all goes well with that operation, that would be the 53rd booster landing at that particular landing site and the 65th booster touchdown in the Sunshine State. Got about 7.5 minutes to go with this particular countdown. Coming up next will be the engine chill of the 9 Merlin 1D engines. Again, flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. That'll help protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. Want to welcome in new channel member James Stanley, joining us with membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard, James. We're glad to have you with us. As a reminder, members who head over to our merch shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. You can find the Crew 11 mission patch there, along with other goodies. Just under 6 minutes now. At this point, the first stage RP-1 tank should be full. Coming up in about a minute is when SpaceX will pressurize to begin the start of the Strongback retraction sequence. The clamp arms just beneath the Dragon's trunk will open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the Strongback, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stay in that position until the test is through, and then it will return to the upright position alongside the rocket and then reclamp around the second stage. One of the indications that the mission had scrubbed yesterday was that the Strongback started moving back into the position you see it at now, around 30 seconds before what was set to be the T0 then. As a reminder, according to what SpaceX and NASA said jointly, the Strongback itself was not the issue, but rather a sensor connected to the cradle arms connected to the Strongback was the problem child yesterday. Presumably all has been alleviated as they are proceeding towards this static fire, coming up now just in about 4 minutes. One other quick bit of housekeeping. Of course, this is a static fire test, not a launch, and so the information provided by SpaceX ahead of time is nowhere near as extensive. So we're just going to throw in the caveat that our countdown clock may just be a hair off. You could see the Strongback now moving away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Doesn't go too far away, again, just a few degrees from the rocket, but enough that you can see the gap that is forming. You can see one of those umbilicals at the top of the Strongback that is connecting up to the Dragon. Less than 3 minutes to go. At this point, the first stage liquid oxygen tank should be full. The same will be true on the second stage in less than 50 seconds. T minus 2 minutes and counting. Rocket now fully fueled. You're seeing the ground gas closeouts in work as SpaceX releases the remaining liquid oxygen in the feed lines ahead of the start of the static fire test. T minus 1 minute and counting. 45 seconds. At this point, the SpaceX launch director should have made the call that they're go to proceed if everything is still on track. 30 seconds. 15 seconds. And here we go. In about 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition. Static fire test has begun. Again, this is a short duration engine burn. Looks like it is now concluded. And with the conclusion of what appeared to be a good static fire test, of course, now is the all-important data review to ensure that SpaceX and NASA and its international partners liked what they saw and that they're ready to proceed towards the launch attempt at Thursday at the earliest. You can see the Strongback has returned to its upright position, and those clamp arms will once again go back to their position surrounding the rocket's second stage, just beneath the Dragon capsule's trunk. Tomorrow is the launch readiness review as things currently stand, when teams will have the big overall agency level briefing and discussion to make sure that everyone is on the same page, that they're in coordination and an agreement that Thursday is the day that they want to launch this mission. One of the things that they said that they would be watching for, though, is the amount of phasing time it would take from liftoff to the point at which the Dragon spacecraft would reach the International Space Station, in order to allow for a comfortable margin regarding the propellant and some of the other essentials and consumables that are on board the Dragon vehicle to endure a flight to the station, its time on orbit, and of course its return to Earth. SpaceX and NASA cap the time for that transit period to 40 hours at the outside. They noted during the briefings earlier this month that a launch on Thursday puts them right around that marginal area where they could consider punting to a different day, just on the off chance that as they consider the timing of everything, once it gets right down to it, If it does look like it's going to reach or potentially cross that 40-hour threshold, then they would shift to their backup launch date, which is August 1st, is their next available slot. A liftoff on the 1st would mean a departure from Launch Complex 39A at 11:43 a.m. Eastern. Backup days would get progressively earlier in the morning if there needed to be a slip beyond the 1st. Again, if they do need to shift to the 1st at all, which at this point is certainly far from determined. That'll be part of what they gauge going into the LRR. We do have an update, though, on the launch weather forecast. This just coming down from the 45th Weather Squadron. Meteorologists forecast a 85% chance for favorable weather at liftoff during the primary launch date. That is Thursday, the 31st, with just a chance for interference from the cumulus cloud rule. However, one thing to watch, though, is the ascent corridor recovery weather is trending in the risk between low to moderate levels on a scale of low to moderate to high. If SpaceX and NASA determine that Thursday is not the day and they need to give it a 24-hour stand down and target Friday morning, weather deteriorates by 5%, so that would be 80% favorable. Same cumulus cloud rule comes into effect in that scenario. However, the ascent corridor recovery weather is a high risk on Friday, also a high risk on Saturday as well, the 2nd. Also, the weather at liftoff would deteriorate again another 5%, so down to 75% favorable in a 48-hour delay from the original launch date of Thursday. A few more watch items come into play as well if SpaceX and NASA decide that Saturday is when they want to try and launch. Not only are they watching for violations of the cumulus cloud rule, but also the surface electric fields rule and the anvil cloud rules. So things get more unsettled as we get closer to the weekend. So from a launch weather perspective, Thursday is the most optimal day, at least as things stand right now. We'll have to wait and see if SpaceX, NASA, and the partners like the data that they see from the static fire test and what the outcome of all this is through the launch readiness review. Again, set for tomorrow, Wednesday, July 30th. Well, that'll go ahead and do it for us on this static fire test live stream as SpaceX now safing the Falcon 9 rocket. One more reminder, we do have a launch scheduled from SpaceX's other Florida-based pad, that is Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Starlink 10-29 is up to bat. Liftoff at 11:37 p.m. Eastern, 03:37 UTC. So we hope to see you back then. Be sure to subscribe and click that bell icon so you'll get notified when we start our live launch coverage if that T0 happens to slip. I want to thank our moderator in the chat, Rick Donner, for helping us out today, as well as to channel member Cumulus Granatus for answering folks' questions. Also, Astro Joe cruised on in at some point during the count, so appreciate you, Joe, for helping us out alongside Rick. Want to thank our photographer, Adam, for getting the cameras ready and waiting, and thankfully we actually got a static fire today. Our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, was operating the technical operations of the broadcast, and most importantly, thanks to you for wherever you have been watching from. Look forward to welcoming you back here. Hopefully later tonight you'll have time to join us for that Starlink launch coverage, and keep your eyes peeled to the channel as we've got some things in the works coming for you in the run-up to Crew 11. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.